Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, Tommi. So, I'm Nidhi Singh. I'm Director of Research at Elisa. And my background is mostly in AI and NLP for last more than 15 years now. And before joining Elisa, I was working in different companies, IBM, Intel, Zalando, in different parts of the world. And at Elisa, my role is to create new innovative products in AI and NLP domain for our customers. Tommi?
And my name is Tommi Somersuo. I also work at the CX Business Solutions Department. I sort of help all our customers with new technical projects and solutions. And I've been in software business for about 20 years now, basically creating things from start to finish. I've been involved in architecting and design and software development, and also been involved in delivering these solutions and providing support for them. So I hope to bring this aspect to this discussion.
So today, let's start the discussion with a simple question as how AI has changed or will continue to change the landscape of customer experience in digital realm. So now, if we want to think about this question in a holistic manner, we'll have to step back a little into the history, let's say. So if we look at last 20 years or so, what has happened is, if we all remember correctly, we have, in general, not just customer experience, but in general, we have moved away from physical interaction to more and more towards digital interactions. So, for example, how much time we were spending on phone, let's say, in 2005, somewhere around that, versus how much time we are spending on phone, let's say, in 2012, and how much time we are spending on phone or digital medium today. It has changed immensely, right? It has increased. So customer experience domain, I believe, has followed the same general trend. It has been more and more digitalized in the last decade and a half, especially. And now, if we want to really dig into the question of how AI has changed this, I would say the short answer is AI has basically accelerated the shift or increased the speed at which we have shifted towards digital medium. So AI, I would say, has become more matured, more reliable. It has moved from research labs to production environments now. And just the power of that has allowed us to automate so many different things that sometimes it amazes even the scientists of how AI can achieve all of this. Now, to be more specific now, when we talk about AI, we're talking about a lot of different things. We're talking about computer vision, we're talking about machine learning, we're talking about NLP and so on. But for customer experience domain specifically, there are two different fields of AI that are very relevant. One is speech recognition. Now, when we say speech recognition, what do we mean? So again, in a nutshell, it's nothing but a system that takes audio signals, not understands, but it takes audio signals and converts it into text. By text, I mean the words. So take an example here. Let's say a customer calls on phone and he says, my laptop is broken. So the speech recognition system is capable of listening to this audio and transforming it to MY space, LAPTOP space, even though it has no understanding none whatsoever about what laptop is. But it knows how to convert the audio into text. An important point here to understand is it cannot understand what broken means, what laptop means. It just knows how to translate the audio into text. Right? The understanding part is also very important. Right? So understanding part comes in when we talk about machine learning. So machine learning is capable of looking at the text and doing multiple things with it. One good example there would be it can classify or it can categorize the text into different categories, into different predefined categories, or it can find out what documents you should use to solve certain customer problems. Right? So those understanding part is the machine learning part. Where does a glitch come? Where do we hit a roadblock? We hit a roadblock when we talk about conversations, understanding customer conversations. Now that's a difficult part even for AI to understand, to get into. So talking like a human, conversing like a human, explaining certain things or answering certain questions is not that easy. Why? Because understanding the documents or websites or long pieces of text is very different from understanding a conversation. So conversation is typically very small, less text, less words, a lot of slang sometimes, typing errors. All those things are not there in, let's say, in documents or emails and so on. So understanding conversation is typically a difficult thing to do. And this is where I would say the last 5 or 7 years, the research community has put in a lot of effort to build conversational AI. Now, conversational AI is a system that is capable of understanding conversations, especially conversations, and also being able to respond or explain. So just like humans do. I would say a lot of research has been done on this, and now it's in a position where we can really productionize it, and it's already being productionized as we speak. So conversational AI, I would say, to customer experience domain is very, very relevant. Now that's from the AI side of it. Tommi, what do you think about the development perspective of the same topic?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at these AI-based solutions, conversational AI bots and machine learning solutions, one thing that is, of course, important there is, of course, data that comes up often. And you, of course, need talented people who are capable of delivering these solutions. You need data scientists, you need AI and ML engineers, you might need software developers. But once you start moving from sort of prototyping and testing phase into actual production, you want things to happen smoothly. And this usually involves basically looking at DevOps practices that we have in traditional software development. They sort of apply the same way in this scenario as well. Normally you have software that you want to deploy, so you have CI and CD pipelines that take care of, for example, testing the pipeline and making sure that your software is going into place automatically. Now, when we look at, for example, the AI scenarios, there you might have data coming in, so you might have some pipelines deployed that take care of collecting the data, validating the data, and then perhaps automating even the training process of the models, and then you can use that as a component for your actual software that you're delivering. Now, all of this is basically to assure that you are doing things frictionlessly and to sort of ensure that your talent is basically able to spend time on doing, really important stuff and value, because unless you automate all these parts, then basically you have to do a lot of things manually. And when you're doing things manually, that of course introduces the human error into place. So things can go wrong really easily. And another thing is that you might not have just one system that you are basically operating. You might have multiple systems deployed. And in order to have basically people enough to take care of all these systems, it's important that you basically automate as much as possible of this. And another factor that comes into mind is now the multi-channel aspect of all this. I mean, your customers are basically interacting with your services in multiple ways. They are contacting you through the phone. They might be contacting you through a chat or a website or email. In some situations, of course, you might have it in the store, so somebody's coming in physically and interacting with you face to face. And basically, to support all of this infrastructure on the background side, you need systems, you need databases, you need applications, and things like that. But what we're also now noticing with the conversational AI bots is that we can route basically these inputs into these bots from different sources. And this brings about scenarios like, let's say you have just deployed one system in place that's an AI, conversational AI bot. Normally you would expect to just be able to chat with that, but we can also basically route, let's say, emails to it, or if we go even further and introduce speech understanding and recognition into this situation, then we can actually have people calling the bot, discussing with the bot. We use speech recognition to basically convert the input into text for the bot, and then voice synthesis to basically respond back to the caller. And now it's a really interesting scenario, because now you have basically one system that is able to handle multiple basically routes of contact. And regarding the chat scenario, of course, it's only a matter of integrating into different platforms. It could be that you have Teams or WhatsApp or social media that people can be connecting from. And now when we move forwards in what's possible, then you have to consider that everybody's basically carrying around a smartphone in their pocket. They're very capable. We can deploy applications there that support speech understanding. And devices these days also come with voice assistants. So it's not very far that you can basically just start a dialogue with a voice assistant that basically connects to some company service, and you can, for example, handle ordering something from there. Now, when we consider that these technical things that I just described, what do you think are sort of the key challenges that might happen there, or how should we balance our, expectations there?
Okay, so on a very practical perspective, on a very practical note, I see there are two main challenges, or two categories of challenges, let me say. So one category is about the data. So that's always an issue with AI-based systems. So first of all, defining the problem concretely enough that it can be solved by an automated system, especially an AI-based system. Defining that problem concretely is not usually trivial. It's I would say, non-trivial task to do. And many times, due to the wrong definition of the problem, we end up not solving it, or solving the wrong way. Then I would say the data side of the whole thing. So finding the right data to solve the defined problem so that we achieve the goals that we really wanted to achieve. So data side is, I would say, a complex piece. People typically ignore it or typically say, oh, data we can find, we have a lot of data. But important thing to understand here is not every data can be consumed by AI-based system. So in order to be able to basically consumable by AI-based systems, the data has to be in a particular shape, in a particular format, in a particular way. Only then AI can basically consume it and produce the results. So finding the right quality of data in the right quantity. So just a couple of records will not do. And it depends on what problem we're dealing with, what area of AI we're dealing with. We need different quantities of data. All right, so we might need a couple of hundreds or to a couple of 100,000s. It really depends on what problem we are solving. So finding the data, right quantity, right quality, in the right format that can be consumed by AI-based system is typically, I would say, a challenge. And it often comes as a surprise to different organizations and different teams in the organizations that, oh, we thought we had the data, but it's not enough. It's not what AI system needed. All right, so that often comes as a surprise to a lot of people. Then the second, in a very practical sense, I would say, challenge is expectations. So different departments, different organizations, typically they set different budgets for AI or automation, and they expect that after spending that sort of budget and after having spent so much of effort and time, we'll achieve wonders. Now, it's possible, yes, definitely possible, but then we have to keep the expectation also kind of more realistic. In the sense, it really depends. AI is a system that learns from the data and then predicts. And it can make errors. It almost always makes errors. Now, error margin could be very small, just 1%, or error margin could be high, as much as 30 to 40%. It really depends on how much it's able to learn from the data and depending on the problem as well. So keeping the expectations in check, more realistic, I would say, is something that we should keep in mind, especially in the industry scenarios. In academics, it's a different thing altogether. Now, based on this, I would say another aspect or another way of looking at it is, okay, given these challenges and given these expectation management thing and so on, what is possible now and what can we expect in the future? This is a question that I'm often asked in different forums. So what's possible now in a nutshell, in a very short answer would be, in customer experience domain, if you look at it specifically, there are certain problems, certain well-defined problems actually, which happen very repeatedly. The volumes are very high for those problems. But as such, they are simple problems to solve from an automation perspective again. Not simple as such, but from an automation perspective, they're simple enough to solve with very high volumes. So those are the perfect use cases, perfect problems for AI to solve. But there are always, and there will always be, certain problem scenarios in customer experience and other domains as well that AI cannot touch or AI cannot solve. And those scenarios would remain. What we can expect going forward is these complex scenarios that AI cannot solve today will probably reduce in number, in quantity, in size. And AI will become more mature, more advanced. So number of complex scenarios that cannot be handled today by AI will be probably solved, some part of it at least, in the coming future. That we can definitely expect. And Tommi, I think you had some really good idea and really cool example to show us as to what's possible even today.
Yeah, that's true. I was thinking that it would be nice to show us something really cool and recent and interesting. So uh, there is a company called OpenAI that's basically working well in AI, and recently they sort of had a demo about something called Codex. And what Codex actually is, it's something that's based on their work on GPT-3, which is a generic language model. And what they basically did is they took this generic model and fine-tuned it for software creation tasks. So now what you end up having is basically a model that is capable of creating software from human instructions. So you're able to interact with this by writing to it and telling it what to do. And we actually think we have a video prepared that we can watch, a short clip, and we'll see what happens.
Make it controllable with the left and right arrow keys. Now this is a pretty high level instruction. You know exactly what's supposed to happen when you push left and what's supposed to happen when you push right. You know, the model really has to infer what's going on in here, and it can't look at the screen. The model only has access to all of this text over here. And so from that alone, it has to infer what to do. But let's see if it worked.
Let's see, I'm curious myself. The code looks reasonable. Okay. It's quite good, but this looks like something I don't quite like. I don't want it to be able to get out of the screen like this.
All right, you found the problem.
Yes.
But it is alive, which I think is pretty good. But let's see if we can fix that problem. So constantly check if the person is off screen and put it back on the screen if so. So again, pretty high level. It's possible that the model won't quite know what we're asking for, but let's give it a try.
Okay,
Go ahead.
let's test it. Okay, this side looks pretty good to me.
It's pretty good.
What about the other side? Let's see what's happening there.
Yes, and I can say the other side worked as well. But I think this is a really cool example of what is possible at the moment. And at the moment, Microsoft and GitHub are basically working on a product called Copilot. And Copilot will be basically an AI assistive tool that programmers can use in similar fashion to basically enhance their software creation. It will be basically assisting them to write software. And this is something that's in beta at the moment. I know it's going to be released in the near future. And also there was an interview few days ago, I think, where the OpenAI CEO, Sam Altman, was interviewed about Codex work and what were his thoughts about this one. And he basically said that, well, he thinks that at the moment it's still in infancy. And he thinks that even though it's great and it's going the right direction, within a year's time, it will be much further in its capabilities. And OpenAI is also working on GPT-4 at the moment. And when this will come, then we'll of course have huge impact on these types of solutions that are built on this technology. Now, when we look at then what should organizations do to leverage these types of technologies and capabilities, I think the first thing that you should do is start really simple, basically baby steps. I mean, you should start gaining basically experience and competence in very simple scenarios and then build on those. I can, for example, describe a very small example that we did with our customer that used speech recognition. They had a customer service situation where they were getting basically voicemails during the night when the customer service was closed. And this meant that in the morning time, the customer service agents would have to listen to sometimes hours worth of voicemails. And we just simply took this and automated it. We just took our ASR and basically produced the text from all these calls. And now it means basically that the customer service agents just have to spend a few minutes of time to read the actual message that they got. So it's saving a lot of time from them. And I think this is a good example of how you can save a lot of time. And another thing is it's important to remember that when we consider the customer experience part, a lot of times it's difficult to let go of the old processes and old ways of doing things. And what happens is that you get situation like you want to use dictation tools. This is something that I've also been asked from my customers that we want to use a dictation tool with our customer service scenario. So it means basically that dictation tools that were created in the 90s, like 30 years ago, are used to solve customer problems now And it means basically that you are in a desktop computer, you put your mouse cursor in place and you click record and say something and a text comes into the screen. So what you actually want to do is consider what is the process that you're trying to solve, and then use the technology there the best way possible. So in this scenario, for example, you could be taking the speech recognition, and you could be taking the conversational AI and then using these as combined to solve the problem without using a dictation tool.